Lance? It's kind of the same thing what Scott was just talking about there. They're big up front. How do you kind of go about attacking that, and what have you seen, from them defensively?
Yeah, they're a talented defense. They have playmakers on all three levels. Their D-line is big. Front will be the biggest, front that we played this year, and really physical up front. The linebackers are fast and mobile, run and hit and tackle well. And then on the back end, all those guys are returning, or most of those guys are returning starters, at least the top four guys, and have played a lot of ball games and are good players. So they've got playmakers at every level, and it's going to be a great challenge. Our guys are excited, for first home game, and really looking forward to this challenge this week.
Yeah, Malik is such a good runner, top running quarterback in the country last year. Are there a certain number of plays that you're comfortable having him run, and what percentage of the time that he runs, is it a called run, or is it just him making a play?
Great question. So to your first question, he is such a dynamic runner that we want to allow him to be able to use his legs, and he wants to run. I mean, he's one of those guys that he knows that he's a difference maker, he's a playmaker, and we didn't do that enough in the first game. And so we came back, and that was one of the adjustments that we made. And he wanted to make that adjustment, and he reached out to me and said that. And so, as a coach, you always, want to limit the hits on your quarterback, but I think he does a great job. I mean, he's one of those guys, he has a knack for making guys miss, not always taking big hits, knowing when to get down, get out of bounds. And so really, it really depends on the flow of the game, as far as the number of called runs for him, because he's obviously going to have the off-script, off-schedule scramble runs, as well. So, you don't have to call a ton of Q runs. He's going to get his carries.
Lance, obviously the offense did take a step forward against UCF, but it had a handful of opportunities and drives derailed by untimely penalties. Why do you think, at least through the first two games of the year, that there's been an abundance of penalties called really on both sides of the ball?
Yeah, one, our guys answered the bell and answered the challenge that Coach Sack gave the team, which was play hard, play with more sense of urgency and more fight. And so I thought offensively our guys did that. We played hard, played with great sense of urgency, and that part was good. There were some positives. But still a lot to clean up. We're right now we're not great on third down. We're not great at converting touchdowns in the red zone. We had multiple opportunities at the end of the game to close it out with us on the field and not putting our defense out on the field, and we didn't do that. And so each week, whether you win or you lose, you come back, you look at the tape, you take note of the things that you did well, and you try to correct the things that you didn't do well. And so we corrected some of our mistakes from game one, and we have to continue to get better each and every week, and that's really just the process that we're going to go through every game this year. And if we just get a little bit better each game, then we can get some confidence going, and we'll be a tough team down the stretch.
Lance, as the wide receiver coach, Scott was talking about getting D and Amari and those guys a little more, Braden more involved. Is that more them running better routes or calling plays for them, or a little bit of both?
I think it's really a combination of both, but I think we have to do a better job. I have to do a better job making sure that we script touches for them early and often, and if they're not, if they haven't touched the ball, make sure that we get to some of their other plays where they're, the primary receiver, and make sure that we get the ball in their hands. So I've got to do a better job of that, and we've talked about that as a staff. And so, we've got to mix all those guys in. I mean, T. Huddy has done a great job. Amari played more last week than he played in week one. He had, every time he's touched the ball, he's been really explosive. I think he's got, over 20 yards, average, per catch. And so just going to have to mix some of those other guys, and it's a combination of all those things.
And it's kind of piggybacking off that and ask Scott about the same thing. I guess when you know that Malik is a dynamic runner and that he can make guys miss, how do you, mix that in with wanting him to develop as a passer and getting those other receivers involved?
Yeah, so Malik is a dynamic playmaker, run and pass. And, you know, a lot of people look at the completion percentage right now where it is, and, well, why is Malik's completion percentage so low? Well, it falls on Malik, but there are a lot of people that are involved in that and have a hand in that. I mean, you know, receivers, tight ends, you know, are we where we're supposed to be when we're supposed to be there? You know, did we run a great route? Did we get open? Did we do what we were supposed to do? You know, did we catch the ball when he got it to us? Up front, did we protect and make sure that he had a clean pocket and was able to keep his eyes down the field? And so that's on all of us as an offense. It always falls on the quarterback, and that's part of playing the quarterback position. But Malik is dynamic, you know, runner and passer.
On red zone offense, you got there right away in the last game and you run it straight up the middle and score. It's always a good run in the red zone. As you look at the season and possessions in the red zone so far, do you adjust, like practicing on some of that stuff, or your play calls, or how do you assess just how this team has done when it's got down into that near goal line situation?
Yeah, you know, I think one of the biggest things that you know we've done in the red zone that has hurt us is the self-inflicted wounds that I talked about last week. Penalties, you know, getting behind the sticks on first and second down, and now you know you're behind the chains and you got, you know, third and long, and it's tough to convert. You know, in the red zone, you know, the field spaces are tighter. You know, there's not as much room to spread the defense out, and so we have to do a better job of staying on track and staying on schedule. And then from a, you know, scripting, you know, from a weekly standpoint, we've looked at, you know, adding, you know, we actually added some red zone periods to make sure that we get some extra reps at those, and really went back and looked at training camp in spring. What were the things that we did really well that we know inside and out, and try to, you know, get more of those base, you know, core concepts run and rep.
Back to wide receivers for a minute. How gratifying is it as a coach, and how do you let your player know that when they make a great downfield block like Tyler Hudson did on Malik's touchdown?
Yeah, you know, I've always said this. I get more excited when receivers make blocks down the field, especially like the one T. Huddy did, than catching a, you know, great pass down the field or for a touchdown, or a, you know, Sports Center, you know, play make, you know, a big play downfield. That's what we're supposed to do, is make a play when the ball's in the air. You know, I think a lot of receivers don't have that mentality to want to block and want to be physical, because to me, blocking, you know, from a receiver standpoint, it's about want to. Do you have that attitude and want to and willingness to go in there and block, even though you're not getting the ball?
Right.
Thanks, guys.